Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 147 of the On Purpose podcast. It's crazy to think in a few short weeks we will be hitting our 3-year anniversary, and just kind of sit in awe of where it started, where it's grown to, and ultimately what it can become. And I'm thankful for each of you for tuning in week after week for almost 3 years, allowing us this place in your life, and hopefully you're getting some good value out of it. And we just want to thank you. And we'll never take you for granted on that journey for sure. So this week I want to talk about something that I really enjoy discussing. And I wanted to title this one called Don't Be Afraid of Your Fears. Right? Don't be afraid of your fears. So I thought before we'd get into it, we should define it. And I looked up a couple different places. I picked the definitions I liked, or the ones that resonate with me. And that is this: fear is a feeling of anxiety concerning the outcome of something or the safety and well-being of someone. So anxiety concerning an outcome of something or safety of someone or something. Afraid is a behavior that you're unwilling or reluctant to do something for fear of the consequences. Right? Being afraid is unwilling or reluctant to do something for fear of consequences. So I want to talk about fear first. Fear is a raw emotion that everybody has. Everybody feels it. I don't care if you're the bravest person in the world, you still have fear. From the greatest Olympic champions down to the smallest of kids, fear is a natural emotion. It's a positive in our life. It's good for you. It keeps you on edge. Lets you know if something isn't right in your world. We've all heard of fight or flight, or most of us have, right? That feeling we get that, okay, we either got to fight right now or we need to run, right? That's fear. That's your body's way of saying, hey, knucklehead, something isn't right here. Most people suffer from a fear of public speaking, right? That's like the number one fear people will mention throughout their whole lives. For me, public speaking fear is very real. Competing, flying, lots of fears. I'll tell you, for me, I was scared shitless walking out to the cage for my MMA fights. Thinking of all the different outcomes that could happen. I'm still fearful every time I key record to make an episode of this podcast. I get a little bit of fear before all my law enforcement classes or before any time I have to do a public speaking event. And after all these years, I've done all these things many times now. We just talked about almost 3 years of the podcast. Why do I still feel fear? And why do you feel fear towards certain things you've done many times in your life? I would say it's this. It's because you care about the outcome. Right, go back to the definition. Fear is a feeling of anxiety concerning the outcome. Well, I care about the outcome. You care about the outcome. When I hit record, I care about giving you quality content that helps your lives become better. When I get to teach law enforcement, I care that I'm giving them quality skills and mindset to return them home safely each shift. A public speaking event, I care that I'm giving them content that inspires them to be better and tools to help them do so. If you think about most things in your life that you care about, there is a natural inclination to have a little bit of fear because the outcomes are uncertain. The outcome isn't a known, it's not a guarantee, which is what life is about, right? That's the edge in life. But what I can tell you, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to walk on the stage to give the talk. I'm not afraid to hit the microphone and sit down and share thoughts and interview people that I think can bring value to you. I'm not afraid to teach a class. Because if I was afraid, that means I don't act. And that basic natural emotion of fear has now become a belief, and worse yet, a behavior. My whole life, I've been afraid of power tools. As long as I can remember, I've always been afraid of power tools. Even though I've never cut my leg off, my finger, my hand. Nobody I know has ever done any of that. Yet it's a belief I have, and it manifests itself to the point that I have been afraid to use power tools my whole life because that could be a result. Somewhere in my life when I was younger, I had a fear of power tools, which I would say is healthy, right? As a young kid, you should have a little bit of fear of a power saw. But now, instead of getting to use, say, a power saw in a safe and supervised manner, which would now allow me to see that my fear is normal, right? You have to be safe, you have to wear gloves, you have to be aware of what's going on around you, but you can still use the tool. I never used the tool. I stayed away from them. I was told that you're going to cut your leg off. So now my fear becomes reinforced into a belief, which becomes now actions of my life. So despite being almost 50 years old and having never seen anybody, I've never once met anybody in life that is missing any part of their body due to a power tool. I've literally hardly ever used in my whole life because it could have happened, right? My initial fear of that outcome was reinforced into a belief that it was possible, and I didn't take action. What about this? People that are afraid to fly so much that they never ever fly, despite having never flown to have the bad experience, right? Almost everybody I know has a healthy fear of flying. It doesn't make sense. You're in a big metal tube, defying the law of gravity, propelling yourself across the country at an extremely fast pace to get to somewhere in an amazingly short amount of time. Makes no sense. So every time I get on a plane, I have a fear of flying. I don't really enjoy it. But I'm not so afraid of it that I never experience it. Fear I like to feel. I had a lot of fear when we started this new lifestyle. Fear of towing a vehicle, fear of backing a trailer, fear of not knowing where I'm going to sleep every night, fear of traveling the country, fear of all kinds of things. But I didn't become afraid to where it paralyzed me that I stayed where I felt safe. With each fear becomes an opportunity to grow. Fear of public speaking, number one fear in the world. Yet how many people do you know ever died while giving a public speech? No, I've never seen anybody die giving a public speech. So why are we so afraid of that? Why does that fear paralyze so many people? Because they don't act towards it. They're just told that public speaking is fearful. They get told over and over, it's the number one fear, don't do it. So then they never do it, even though they never experienced giving a bad speech. Which, if you do give a bad speech, which I've done plenty of, you'll realize, most people forget about it in the next 10 minutes anyhow, and it's really not that big a deal. In your life, most of the good things that happen to you and for you almost always had fear before it took place. Right? Most of the time, what you want in life, you have to face some fear and then go forward. If you get to that moment where that fear creeps in and your behavior is to be afraid and back away and paralyzed and not to act, you're missing out on a lot of life. So it's not weak to have fear. It's not a shortcoming to feel it. It means you're about to do something that's super awesome, right? It means it's your body's way of saying, oh yeah, we're about to do something that you give a shit about. So when you feel fear, it's probably something you should step towards instead of being afraid and backing away. So give that some thought and think about, what am I always wanted to do in my life, in my career, in my relationships that I've been afraid to do because I had an initial fear, I didn't act, and now I paralyzed it. Now I'm paralyzed by it. And look to take action towards those. Most of our fears, what we imagining happening, are worst case scenario. And usually when you take action and go towards the fear, even if you come up short of your desired outcome, it's way less painful than the worst case scenario. But you'll never know if you don't go towards fear and give it a shot. Have an awesome week this week on Purpose Community. Remember, don't be afraid of your fears. They're good for you, but be afraid of not acting on them. Have a great week. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.